what it is your girl Cadillac. Yes, I am Cadillac Dixon. I'm the Draw My Life prison wife. I'm the legally blind artist that is rapping and painting for justice. Girl, I did a little bit too much right there. To see justice before it all fades to black. Yes, it's your girl Cadillac. Anyways, it's about 3 a.m. just about. I got church in the morning, girl. I mean, well, later this morning. So I am going to get through this session of reading the transcript. I hope fairly before an hour or two, maybe an hour and a half. I hope so. So right now I am going to pick up where we left off in the last video where we just, okay, so it's kind of out of order. Today, it took me 2.5 hours, girl, to get through the testimonies of the alleged victims. And then after they testified in court, the police, actually 3 police testified and conflicted each other. So the 2 victims conflicted with each other. I recorded that today. 2 days ago, I recorded the 3 police since I was on that tangent about the grave mistakes we make when we take a conviction at face value, meaning just because a person is convicted, you assume that they deserve everything that's happening to them because they shouldn't have did what they did. But what happens when they didn't do what they got them down for doing? They still deserve all that abuse and inhumaneness that's going on in DLC. So this whole series started with me just covering the case of Corey Miller. And it has blossomed into me picking back up my torch and fighting for my husband, Marchello Jackson. Out of respect for those who watch my channel, I try not to talk about it so much, but I do keep the essence of it. That's why my name is still the OG prison wife. I'm still the Draw My Life prison wife, though I'm doing family vlogs or I'm doing art or I'm doing other things. I'm a full total woman. Like I have multifaceted woman. So that's not the only thing in my life that I'm a prison wife, but it's a big part of my life. And it's a big part I have to kind of contain because people don't always want to hear it. But God, I believe God told me to cover that story. And through me covering the story of Corey Miller, it led to me picking back up my torch and fighting for my husband and going back to those transcripts. You got to stay in them transcripts if you fighting for your husband. Girl, to anybody out there that stands in these same shoes who has a loved one that is wrongfully convicted, me, I have no backing system. I have no support system. But if you have a support system, if you have at least just a team of 1 or 2 or maybe 3 people, you guys can cover more ground. Stay in them transcripts, girl. You can order your transcripts. I always thought that, I blindly thought that transcripts were super expensive, which they are. They're like $1 something per page. It could be $2 now because we're now in the year of 2023. So it's probably way more than it used to be. But back then it was $1 a page. And that's easily 200 something pages. It can get quite costly, but I did not know that you can order a flash drive of the trial transcripts, and it's just as good, girl. You can load it up on your computer and digitally start tearing that case apart. Start looking through everything, because as long as a case just sits on the shelf, that is time that that person is wasting away in prison. And my husband could have been home with his family, raising his daughter. He's about to miss his he missed the birth of his granddaughter last year. He's about to miss now his granddaughter's first birthday. And he's also about to miss his daughter's college graduation in May. He's missed every milestone in her life. But there's still time to free him from this wrongful conviction. Check the description box. I have his change petition that I do need to update with the new things because I continue to research his case, the newer things that was written in 2020. So it does need updates. But check his change petition. If you believe that everything is not 100%, if there's any reasonable doubt, sign it. All I'm asking for is a new fair trial, a new trial for him, fair, not tampered with, not omitting certain things, not omitting the driver. Don't omit the driver. Tell what really happened with that driver. Don't omit that weapon. Tell why you have the weapon, but you don't want to put it in court evidence. Tell that. Open everything, because we know that everything is not copacetic. This has been 20 years. We found out too much from the time that this happened in 2001 and this trial happened in 2002 till now. Let me show you guys something. I got something to show y'all. This Marchello's trial was set the week before Easter in 2020. I'm sorry, girl. Marchello's trial was set the week before Easter in 2002. The week prior to Marchello going to trial, our daughter was only 2 months old when he was wrongfully arrested. So all these accounts of that night, our daughter was only 2 months old. I just got off of bed rest. And Marchello went out and bought this Easter dress for his daughter, who was now 9 months old. She was 9 months old when he went to trial. He went and bought this dress. Cute little dress from Target. He bought that with intentions of watching his daughter wear this to church with him. That following weekend would have been Easter. But instead, the way he seen his daughter in this dress was when she wore it. And he had to touch her hand through a glass, a thick, several inch thick glass. That's how he seen his daughter in this Easter dress. His daughter is now 21 years old. She does not at all know her father being free. All she knows is visiting her father in prison from age 2 months to almost 22 years old. Our granddaughter will be almost 17 when he is released. His release date, 2039, she will be almost 17 years old. We have time to salvage in his life. The state of Florida sent this man away for 40 years wrongfully. But you can help me get him home. The wrongful conviction doesn't have to stand forever. We can overturn this. I just need some backing. I need some momentum. I need some traction in this case. It can't be just me, hashtag free Marchello, hashtag. I'm burning out. I'm burning out. Everyone marches for every other situation. But when somebody is outed through the court system, nobody bats an eye. Nobody bats an eye. But it's still death. That's still death. You took his life. That's still death. But we have time to save him. Okay, so before I jump back into the transcripts, and I'm going to read the state and Marchello's public defender, or acting public defender, because he actually was a crime specialist. He was a criminal justice crime specialist. He wasn't just a public defender. And the reason we ended up with this man was because they claimed that driver got away, but that driver, they said there's a conflict of interest. I have it in the file where that the public defender's office could not defend Marchello because they had reason when they seen Marchello and basically conferred with him that first time. Marchello quickly said, hey, my cousin did this. Like, I just jumped in the car. My cousin was the driver. So they said they had reason to believe that Marchello would say something incriminating against their client. The driver was their client. So they could not defend Marchello. And in the middle of Marchello's case, the public defender dropped Marchello. And he said that it would basically be like I'm defending both sides of the case. I cannot defend this person and defend Marchello. The whole while, 3 police officers and 2 victim/witnesses all lie and say that that driver got away, when in fact that driver never got away. That driver got a lighter sentence. He got a different trial and got a lighter sentence. So I'm going to make it my business to find the transcripts to that other trial, to order them and find them, so I can compare what is said in this trial and what is said in the trial of the driver. Because in the trial of the driver, they would have had to omit Marchello. Or they could have said he's being tried separately. But I want to see what they were saying. The state witnesses were the 3 officers. I want to see, are the officers' testimonies the same in that second trial as they are in this trial? Do their own testimonies conflict with one another? Because right now we do see that the 3 officers' testimonies are conflicting amongst themselves. And it's also the 2 alleged victims are conflicting against themselves. They were not victims. They should have been suspects as well. It should have been suspect 1, 2, 3, 4. It should have been 4 suspects, not 2 victims and 2 suspects, and 1 gets away. And we put this all on Marchello Jackson. Making Marchello Jackson the head of the crime makes the whole trial not make any damn sense. It makes no sense. So I'm going to read the closing statements. And before we get into it, let me release something. I just found this out. I just seen this. So God, I believe God is leading me through this situation. I prayed today that he would release Marchello from this wrongful conviction, which in turn will release me from this. I'm bound to this. This has been my life's work since I was 20 years old. I birthed a daughter, and I also birthed a burden of trying to free a man in an unjust society, in a biased society, in an unjust court system, in an unjust and unjust legal system. I have been fighting a mountain. I have been fighting a Goliath This is a Goliath. If there's anyone in this, anything in this world that's a Goliath, it is the legal system and black people. Black people don't stand a chance in this system. And let me rephrase that. Poor people don't stand a chance in this legal system. So he was black and poor. So that's a double whammy. But what I found out today, if y'all listen to, I don't know what y'all watch. Y'all can go back and watch them. They are rather long. So later I'll probably chop them up into smaller videos. I know it's hard. So like little doses, you don't want to have the person take the whole thing of medicine at once. So let's have them take it little by little, or let's sugarcoat it a little bit. You know what I mean? It's too much for you to take in. So I'll break it down. But if you didn't watch it, go back and watch a little bit of it. Through the whole trial, they refer to the driver, which was Marchello's cousin, and Marchello as two black guys. One of the alleged victims refers to them as two colored guys. I really didn't know we still used colored in 2001, but evidently we did. They were two colored guys. And y'all know how I've been explaining how I don't understand how everyone came to that description of that missing driver. How did a white male officer, Hispanic male officer, a black female officer, how did all three of them and two white victims, that means all five, ID the missing suspect as a black guy and a colored guy? I kept telling you how he is just as light and bright as a white man. Think of Tom Joyner. If Tom Joyner committed any kind of crime and you see him running away, trying to get away, he's the driver, and now he's trying to get away, would you ever tell the police he was a black guy? If it happened that quick, I don't even think you could tell what his nationality was. If Drake, Lil Wayne and Drake, that's a good comparison, because Marchello is about Lil Wayne's color. And that alleged driver that got away is about Drake's color. If Lil Wayne and Drake commit a crime, are you going to call them two black guys, two colored guys? You're going to differentiate. You're going to say it was a light skin or a high yellow or white or Hispanic and a black guy with dreads. That's how you're going to explain it. Okay, another example, Mariah Carey and Jennifer Hudson. Now we turning it to the females. We ain't leaving the females out. Mariah Carey, Jennifer Hudson commit a crime. And they ask you, who did you see? Are you going to say, I seen two black females, two colored females? Are you going to describe them that way? No, most likely you're not. Mariah Carey most likely is not going to be described as a black or a colored female at all. But guess what I seen today when I was researching? The missing driver, long rap sheet before, well, substantially long. He was pretty young. It was long enough. It was some inquiries there before this alleged incident with Marchello, and a long rap sheet after. Marchello had no priors, and he has nothing else after this. But guess what I found today? That alleged driver that allegedly got away, that did not get away. Well, He's been in and out of jail, in and out, in and out, and he is in at the time. And when he checked in, his mugshot says white male. White male. White male. And as I'm looking at this mugshot, he looks like a white male. He looks, you would never mistake him for a black guy or a colored guy. So what I'm working on now, I got my little Photoshop open in the background. I'm gonna have to do this tomorrow because I've spent a long time today, right? I'm gonna pixelate out his face because I'm not trying to really incriminate nobody. I'm just trying to free my husband. I'm gonna pixelate out his mugshot so you won't be able to see the center of his face. But God doggy, you gonna see that skin tone. And you're gonna say, well, dang, how can they have ID'd him as a black guy, a colored guy? You would have mistaken him for a white guy. And now he's actually listed as a white guy. Now remember that as I read the closing statements of this trial. I really call trials stage plays because they ain't to come to justice. There's just some stuff they got to play out. They got to play those trials out to keep up the illusion that your rights are being upheld. You know how we have the right to a fair trial? So they're going to have a trial for you. That shit ain't finna be fair. I'm sorry. That ish ain't finna be fair. But they'll have a trial for you. They'll have a trial in front of some folks. But it ain't going to be a jury of your peers. But they'll have a trial in front of some people. It's a stage play. It's to give you the illusion that your constitutional rights and your civil rights are being upheld. But they're not there to come to justice. When court was in session in April of 2002, they were not there to come to the conclusion of justice. If they were, they would have seen through all these lies. All these lies. Okay, so before I jump into the transcript, I do want to do a quick wrap. Because, girl, I started out trying to break my husband's case through music. That's the whole reason why I pursued a music career. All right. This is called It Could Have Been Me. The first verse, I'm going to do the first little chorus, and then I'm going to do the second chorus. It could have been me. You know I could have been dead and gone. But Lord, you allowed me to breathe another day. Lord, you allowed me to carry on. It could have been me. With no food to eat, no shoes upon my feet. And if it wasn't for your grace, then, Lord, it would have been me. It could have been you. And you could have been up the road and gone. For some you didn't do, and it'd be decades for you get back home. Hey, what if it were you that was taken from your kid? Now their life, you missed it. Your lucky stars, you better thank them that you ain't in this wicked system. 'Cause Lord knows that it could have been. Man, it could have been you. It could be any of us sitting here fighting for freedom. But today is Marchello. It's Marchello Jackson. Free Marchello. Free Corey Miller. I don't know if Corey Miller is guilty or not. I haven't gotten that deep into his story. But I believe that everybody deserves to have their case heard twice. Not just that one day in freaking court. Because how will you ever find a wrongful conviction if you never hear any motions, if you deny everything that is brought before the court, if everything is shot down before it is heard? How could you ever find out if anybody is wrongfully convicted? Hear them out. If it don't make sense, if it don't line up, then rule it out. But at least hear it. Hear it out. All right, so let's get to this little transcript, girl, because I got to go to sleep. I don't want to be nodding off in church. All right, let's zoom in a little bit, and I am going to get to reading. Why won't it zoom? Oh, there it is. I'm going to get to reading the closing statements. All right. This is in the case of the state of Florida versus Marchello Jackson. Okay, I'm just trying to open up my computer. Oh, it's taking a minute, girl. I was supposed to work on these paintings tonight. Girl, you see how my life just revolves around this case? I was supposed to finish these paintings. I have that. We getting ready for our granddaughter's first birthday. I had this. I was supposed to finish that. I got to do the decorations for that. But I'm all behind because I'm stuck in this case. I want my husband home, man. He's been gone for 21 years. Even if he did this alleged crime, this 21 years has been enough time. It's been enough time. But they don't have no evidence. I have never seen nobody put away with as less as that they have. They claim he had a weapon, but we couldn't find it. Where do they do that at? Where you can be charged with the weapon, but they never have to produce the weapon. Where do they do that at? There was no fingerprints of Marchello's found. And even in this, it says no DNA, no nothing. You have nothing tangible. Tangible is this. I can touch this. If this was a weapon, I could touch this. You have nothing tangible in this case. Why is this man locked away for so long? And nobody cares. It's because he's a black person, a black male, and nobody cares. He's one of the throwaways of society. Okay, so I am going to see where we left off. Now my computer's stalling. Come on, let my computer go. Let it go. I know the devil always like to stall some stuff up and hold some stuff up, but it's time for him to be free. Later for all of this. I need freedom as well, too, out this sentence, because I have been wrongfully attached to this, using my whole life to fight this cause. Since I was 20 years old, I have been fighting for my husband to come home. I am about to be 42. I'm about to be 42. I literally used my whole life. Okay, every time I try to move the transcript, the little scrolling bar, in graphic design school, we used to call it the spinning wheel of death, because it would love to do that when you have an assignment due. Okay, so here it goes. Okay, court. All right, this is where we left off. So if you're not up to date, I do have it is a 2.5-hour trial. Girl, that was the testimony of the two alleged victims. I don't know if you would go back and watch it, but if you want to, you can go back and see what they said. But in this closing statement, they're going to basically synopsize what they said. Okay, the court, and the court is the judge. All right, Mr. Jackson, come back up with Mr. Sims and bring in the jury. Okay, court deputy, everyone please rise. Let me make sure I'm reading the right one. Am I reading the right one? Okay, yes, I am. Okay, everyone please rise. The jury is entering. Court deputy, you may be seated. The court. All right, a couple of preliminary matters, one of which is that the count of robbery as, I'm going to the next part. My eyes are going to bed. Y'all know I'm legally blind, so it is very hard for me to read this white on black. So if I do make mistakes reading, I'm really trying my best. And I've been reading this transcript all day, so my eyes are extremely tired and exhausted. Okay, as it relates to count 5, to Mr. Wintle, because of the way the information read, I have to reduce down to attempted robbery. The information alleged that the money was taken, and there was no evidence that the money was taken. So that count is now down to an attempted robbery. The other preliminary matters I have is Mr. Murray. You are the alternative juror in the case. We do that in the event, and then there's the dash dash, as I explained. Those are going to be, I'm going to pause wherever they have a dash dash. So that's what that is. In the event, anytime we have a case that go more than one day, because we are just backed up with trials, we try to get them done, one time out of the box. And so if something happens to one of the jurors or happens to somebody in their family and they are unable to come back, we need to have an alternative juror to step in that situation. And everybody appears to be healthily and well-doing. Is that right? The jury, affirmative response, the court. So you've got a couple of options available to you. You're welcome to stay and listen to the arguments, the law, and then wait and see what occurs in the case. Or you can leave at this time and I will give you a card with my number on it. And you can call later, today or tomorrow, and we'll let you know what happened. Or you can leave and we won't ever hear from you again. Those are your options. What would you like to do? Juror number 1406. I'll take the phone number. The court. Okay. I hope that you find this to be an interesting experience. I thank you for your participation as a juror, and you are excused then from further jury service. Alternative juror excused. The court. All right, for the rest of the members of the jury, we're ready now to go forward with the closing arguments of the lawyers. I'm going to ask that you please pay attention to those arguments as they're intended to aid you in understanding the case. Counsel for the defense has an opportunity to go first. Counsel for the state has an opportunity to follow that closing argument. Counsel for the state then would be entitled to a closing argument. Both counsels would be entitled to up to 45 minutes for their closing arguments. Mr. Sims, you may proceed, sir. Mr. Sims is Marchello's acting public defender. Mr. Sims, thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court and counsel, good afternoon. Once again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the rest of the story. Things don't always end up the way that they start out. And one of the hard parts of being a juror is trying to determine who has what motive. What really might have happened when you weren't there, when I certainly wasn't there, and Ms. Brennan wasn't there. The burden you have is to complete a total burden of saying, man, I've got a really life-changing decision to make. I've just got to figure out who I believe the most and then decide if I believe them enough to say that I'm convinced beyond an exclusion of a reasonable doubt that this actually occurred exactly the way they said. And if it occurred that way, then I have to do my duty. If I've got a total abiding conviction of guilt, I'm going to. But I just don't know if there may be something a little bit different. If something just smells wrong, then I can't be convinced. And I've got to find this man not guilty for one good reason, because he is not guilty. underneath our law because he didn't do it. I'm not going to bore you with a whole bunch of details because you have sat here and it's only been what? What have we been here? 5 hours, 4 hours maybe at the most listening to testimony? Please don't let the brevity let you believe that this isn't monumentally important to everybody. My client, to my ass. I'm sorry, he didn't say that, to my ass. To the state of Florida, all of us as citizens, because it is monumentally important. Quotation marks. I lost $80, or quotation mark, I lost $60. That's a mistake. Does 60 sound like 50? Does a 6 look like an 8? Can you mistake, or really, was that what this kid had? Which is not at all what my client had. Because make no mistake about it, he had $60 on him. The cops got it off of him, 320s. And that's one of the big connections in this case, right? We have the goods on him. We have the actual evidence. There were 3 $60 bills. All right. 3 $20 bills that this poor victim had. And guess what? 100 feet away, he had 3 $20 bills. And that all makes really good sense as far as, well, quotation marks, well, there's that reasonable doubt that I don't have. I mean, he lost $60. He lost 60 and he has 60. It's only been seconds. It's 100 yards or 100 feet away. Only one thing wrong with that. This statement is written within 22 minutes. This is Exhibit 1 for the state. It's written within 22 minutes of all this activity going down. The stop of the car, within the 22 minutes, Mr. Nevins, who told you this morning, I wrote this out on the hood of the car, on the trunk of the car. Not very good lighting, but I wrote it out before I ever went down to identify this man. And I wrote it down and I tried to give it as complete as I could. Wrote it right away. And he also said, I did add anything to it. That's what it says, I did. I did add anything to it. Please search your memories and remember what I asked specifically. Now, did you write, this is what he asked. Now, did you write just one statement? Did your write, they have a typo. Did your write more? Question mark. Quotations. He answered, I just wrote one. Did you ever, quotations, did you ever do a follow-up? Quotations, no. Did you ever amend this chart? Or I'm sorry, did you ever amend this or change it in any way? No. When I talked to him right off the bat, he said no. I also gave this document, not this one, but my copy of it. Remember, about 3 times to him during the time of me talking with him and him not remembering what he had written or saying other things today than he had said back on August the 12th or August 13th when he made this statement. I gave it to him 3 times. He had plenty of time to read over to see what was that. What was what? I'm sorry. And he says clearly, look down there on the left, gave all my money, and then it's a blank. The court, so the court cuts him off. We're not going to publish the exhibit during closing arguments. You can hold it up, but we're not going to send it around the jury. Mr. Sims, well, please. Okay, Your Honor, apologies. I didn't realize that was your rule. You can look on that. It's kind of thin, but you're going to get a chance to take all this back with you. It says 8-0. It's not a mistake. It's not a 6 that kind of looks like an 8. It's definitely an 8. And he told you today under oath, I had $60. That's a connection to this man. And he says he got it from a bartender. He didn't get it from an ATM. He didn't run it off a card. It was just a bartender at the club. Remember, I'm not saying the club's name. It was just a bartender at the club that gave him $60. Now, why did he need $60? He told you, and Mr. Wintle told you, I had no money. And this guy was not only the older man in the relationship, but he kind of looked after him as the older man in their relationship. Why do you need $60 is what he said. 80 is what he wrote. Why do you need that much money to get home? Because on that document, you will also see place of business is Plant City. That's over near Tampa. But he lived at the time at Town Square. He's going to travel over to the other side of Orlando, but he needs $60 or $80 to do it. And he just gets it from a bartender. I submit to you, when you hold this up and you look around it, when you look at the evidence that he told you from that stand and you use your logic and your common sense, you'll say, wait a minute. These are some fellows that are having a good day at a place that has a pretty good party atmosphere. And at the end of the day of drinking, they've not quite received the buzz they wanted. So a bartender would have no problem giving some money. Then it's a space. Ms. Brennan, so I guess she cut him off. Ms. Brennan says, Judge, I object to arguing facts, not in evidence. The court sustained. Mr. Sims, there is no doubt that there is no need for $60 to travel home. $60, however, can buy a lot of other things. And realize these guys said that they came back to the club after this all was over. They said because they were shaken and they were going to drink some more. But if somebody had given you $60 for something and you came back, you'd have to explain to them, I don't have your money anymore. Don't have your $80 is what he wrote. I don't have your $80 anymore because I got robbed and the police kept the money. Well, they didn't keep his money. Whoever ran off and didn't get caught, then he says his name, we'll just say UC, has $80 in his pocket at least. This guy had 60 because there's no indication we handed the wallets to the bad guy, Marchello, and he split up some money with the driver. That's not the allegation. It's not like that. Oh, I had an 80. He took 60. He gave 20 to him. They said we gave him the wallets. There was nothing in it. And then we gave him the money separately because we thought, well, maybe this will save me. No. The guy that had the 80 bucks was the guy that really ran off. The guy that was doing who knows what with it. And his intention was to do who knows what with it. Marchello Jackson has a job. And don't shift. Whose job is it to prove this case? It's certainly not our job to prove that Marchello Jackson had a job. If they wanted to prove he didn't have a job, the state had an ample opportunity. They could have called bosses. They could have called anybody. They didn't. Marchello told you. He took the stand. You saw how he talked. He said, yeah, I had a job. And I made this much money exactly. And this many cents. I don't even know how much money I had on that day. But it was after payday, just a couple of days. That makes sense that I would have 60 bucks plus some change on me. So my point is simply this. All the money I gave, $80, you've got to go back and tell the guy who gave it to you, I'm sorry. I'm coming back with nothing for you because I got robbed. And then the police found $60. No, I didn't. I'm sorry. No, I did get robbed. The guy ran off when he took the money that I had gotten from you, and now he has, and I have nothing. So please don't be mad at me. Although the police took $60 from somebody and they held on to it. Look around, look under, look through. There is no consistency there. That money that they took, they found Marchello. They initially wrote in their statements that Marchello took $80 from one of them. Marchello demanded their wallets. He searched their wallets. Their wallets didn't have anything in them. He said, come on, I know you got to have something. One guy remembers that he has money in his pocket that he borrowed from the bartender. He wrote in his written statement, and his friend wrote in his written statement. Both of them wrote that $80 was robbed from us. When Marchello was searched, Marchello had $60 on his person. The affidavits, the sworn affidavits, were given back to the two guys, and they crossed out the 80 and wrote in 60. And their justification of why they both wrote 80 but meant 60 was because they were so shaken up. So they wrote their initial affidavits, and then following that, the arresting officer wrote the $60 in so that that could align with Marchello. And that's where this back and forth about this 60 and 80, because they initially wrote that 80. They searched Marchello. So this is the row is going in. They wrote 80. They searched Marchello. Marchello did not have 80. He had 60. They went back, gave the affidavits back to them. They crossed it out and wrote in 60 to align with Marchello. Okay. So please don't be mad at me. Although the police took 60 from somebody, they held on to it. Look around, look under, look through. There is no consistency there. And the one is as likely as the other one that they were doing something else that wasn't kosher as well as, and then it's a space, that's just as likely as well they were getting carjacked. So basically saying that the cousin was taking them into the hood to go get right is just as likely as they've been carjacked and taken from the club. So basically, whose story do you believe? There's no evidence backing either story, to be honest with you. There's no evidence backing either story. They destroyed the evidence. The evidence that could have proved would have been the parking lot surveillance of that club. It could have proved whether Marchello in fact was there or not. And it would have seen if that car came through there and came back out with a different driver. It would have showed all of that. But they deleted that. They lied. They said this club, this very famous club, did not have security cameras in the parking lot. They said it did not have it. So at that point, Marchello was not able to prove where he was. He said, okay, well, we know. I felt like that was a lie, but okay, we got to go with what they saying. We're only 20 years old. We don't really know how this works. So I'm like, I know good goddamn well 7-Eleven has surveillance. Marchello said he was at the 7-Eleven and his cousin just picked him up. Can we get those surveillance? And they told us no, because it costs too much. It's too costly to pull 7-Eleven surveillance to prove that you were at the 7-Eleven. So at that point now, there is no way to prove either story. They could have proved or disproved. Either one would have helped in this situation. But right now you have this ambiguous situation. We really don't know what happened. And there really is no evidence backing either story. There is no evidence backing their story of being carjacked, robbed, and taken from their location. Where is the evidence of that? Only thing you have is two guys that said Marchello robbed them of money. And it's not even the same amount. That's just like if I said that you stole my purse, but it was a red purse. And you came up and you was found with a green purse. Okay, it's not the same thing. You can't surely say, well, that's the person that stole that purse because you got this green purse. But I wrote in my statement that you had a red purse. I had a red purse that you stole. That's the same thing that's happening. Okay, look around, look under, look through. There is no consistency there. And one is likely as the other, that they were doing something else. That wasn't kosher as well. That just as likely as well, them getting carjacked. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. I submit to you that Mr. Nevin's testimony was quite interesting. And he said they told us they were going to take us by the lake and ill us, like out us. Trying to be YouTube friendly. There's a lake right behind the parking lot. They testified that if he turned out, and Mr. Nevin said, who had been to the club a lot of times, that he turned Mr. Wintle onto the club. And he and Mr. Wintle said he'd been there 4 to 8 times. Remember earlier this morning, Nevin said there was one way in and it's the same way out. And the gate goes all the way around. Remember, I did a little turn here. It goes all the way by 441 South Orange Blossom Trail. It comes over by the woods. There's a fence by the lake. And then it comes right up by the actual hotel. And then there's a little entranceway. And they have people around there because they know what happens at these type bars. And they want to protect people. One way is the same way out. One way in is the same way out. That's what Nevin said. And Nevin said, they took us out. They said they were going to ill us and take us to the lake. But then he testifies, we went out of here and we didn't go by this lake. And there's sure plenty of lakes in Orange County, but they turned down into the interior of the town, over in the section that the officer told you is a high substance area that he patrols right off of there, over Livingston and Westmoreland. The high substance area is where they're going. Well, in that same document that you have, you can check and see if on the night in question, 22 minutes after it all happens, this kid said they were taking us to a lake, officer. They said they were going to ill us. He said somewhere in there, and I will give you that. He says somewhere in there. Well, they said, when I said, let us go, he gave and asked to get out and have car. Okay, that makes no sense, but this is probably some typos. He gave and asked to get out and have car. They said, no, we will oot you, like pow you, and pointed the gun at his head. He does say that, which is nodding that he said in court today. But he remembered because he was fearful, because this was a terrible time. He'd rather these words forever. He'd remember these words forever. Okay, let me reread that because I skipped over it incorrectly. I read over it incorrectly. Remembered because he was fearful, because this is a terrible time. He'd remember these words forever. He specifically remembers the M-U-R-D-E-R. We're going to ill you. And that's a pretty important word or set of words to remember when you're determining what has happened to you and you're trying your best to let the police know exactly what went on. Those are haunting words that you would never, ever forget. And he doesn't write them 22 minutes later. I submit to you, he doesn't write them because they were never said. Because that's not what was happening in that car that night. This is totally of the tangible evidence. This is the totality of the tangible evidence that the state has presented to you. In this case, they haven't presented to you the $60 that the police took into custody. But sure, we know they got $60. We're not contesting that. They presented you with two statements that were made 22 minutes after the car stopped. They presented you with this picture of Marchello, State Exhibit 4, as he looked the morning he was arrested. And an interesting side note here, the officers say, oh, it's a prior booking photo. Everybody kind of skewers what they were saying. You notice that in court, they skewer it a certain way to try to point the finger at who they assume the bad guy is. it's a prior booking photo, as if he had priors. And then I had to come back and tell them, well, it's a booking photo from that night. You don't know anything about his past. Well, no, I don't. That's skewering the testimony to make the bad guy look worse. The bad guy in the hot seat. The only other piece of physical evidence we have is 4 photographs taken on a Polaroid of a car. You can barely see it. Now, as I told you at the beginning, with absolutely no physical evidence in the way of fingerprints, hair, DNA, but especially fingerprints in this car that indicates that my client was in it, with absolutely no evidence whatsoever that's physical, that you can hold in your hand like this, girl. They said, you know, they're in the area. They didn't find anything. You have evidence that my client was in that car. In fact, there was a GUN from a very unlikely source himself. Marchello Jackson tells you, yeah, I was in that car. You don't have my fingerprints. I was in there. And he, guess what? During the course of being in the car, my cousin throws a GUN in my lap, which I just get rid of because I don't know because I know what time it is. I know what I'm going to have trouble. I know that I'm going to have trouble. The black kid with the dreads holding the GUN and saying, my cousin was this, I just got a ride. It's not hard to figure out why the kid throws the GUN and runs in that neighborhood at the time of night when that has occurred. Please judge credibility by what somebody tells you happened and by their truthful reporting of events. Because I don't know if you can tell, but this ain't my first rodeo. I've done this a few times. And if this gentleman has had 6 months to plot and plan and come up with some lie, don't you think it could have been a lot better than I was in the car? I was in the car. I was walking by it. That would have been better than I was in the car, or I never saw a GUN. I don't know what these guys are talking about. But he tells you, yeah, I saw a GUN. I know a GUN. It was a GUN, no doubt. And I was in that car. You don't need fingerprints. He's telling you. He's not trying to weasel. He's telling you what he saw and what he knows. And he even said, yeah, I can drive. I can drive a stick. He answered your question. Whoever asked that. I can drive a stick shift, but I haven't driven one in a long time. I don't even have a license. Now, he could have said, yeah, I have a license. I drive all the time, Volvos, VWs, what have you. All my friends, I drive. I don't own a car myself. Who could say anything different about that? But he tells you, well, no, the only time I really drove, I was 16. I'm 20 now. He was 19 when this happened. It was my uncle's Honda I drove around the neighborhood. He's willing to show you his warts and all because he believes in the truth. He's shown you the facts as he saw them. He's not trying to slant them in any way to you. He's telling you what he saw. And I don't know that that can be said about everybody. Now, of course, you said, but these kids seem very upset. All the cops admitted that they were very upset when they got out the car. Well, sure, they were upset. They were just involved in a chase. They might have been doing something they shouldn't have been doing. At the very least, they're crawling out of the back of the car with GUNs pointed at them. That upsets just about everybody. So it makes sense that they're upset. One even says he vomited, although nobody else mentions he went to the side and vomited. But I submit to you, you could vomit if you had just gone into an area where you knew you shouldn't have been, and you did so willingly and voluntarily to try to do something else. And when you were in there, things went to pieces, and suddenly the cops are on your tail, and all you could think of is, oh Lord, what are my parents in Vermont going to think? I've been down here 3 or 4 months. I've hooked up with this guy. I'm now hanging out at this club, and now I'm in this neighborhood getting chased by the cops. That'll make you nervous. That'll make you throw up. Having a GUN pointed at you will certainly will shake you. A police GUN, just like any other GUN. So let's see. One of the other things this young man told you, Mr. Nevins, was that he wrote this statement before he ever, I'm sorry, my eyes, God, oh guys, I can get through this. I can get through this. Okay. Just like another GUN. So let's see. One of the other things this young man told you, Mr. Nevins, was that he wrote this statement before he ever had a chance to identify my client as the one being in the car. But when you read this statement back, you'll see that that next to the last line is the guy that ID'd was the guy that held the GUN to my friend and my head. Okay, think of the importance of that. He told you and me, I wrote this statement all at once before we ever ID'd him as the person. Okay, but he's clearly, when he's writing this statement, already identified him. That's what that says. And right next to that on this document is the $80. Even after they've caught Mr. Jackson with the $60, he's writing what really happened. It was $80 that was taken from me and that I had just gotten from my friend, the bartender at the club. Put that aside for a second. Mr. Wintle indicates that it was 2 colored men that accosted them. That he never, let me show you, let me stop for a second. I'm going to show you this other colored guy. I got a way I could show you. The suspects are 2 colored guys or 2 black guys. Let me show you this. Here's my tablet. I'm about to show you this other colored guy that is now booked under being a white guy. He's booked as a white male. But they just keep saying 2 colored guys, 2 black guys. Hey, where's my tablet? Where is my tablet? I want to show y'all this. Okay, look like I can't find my tablet. See, can I show you on my laptop? My laptop lags some. But let me see if I can show you on my laptop. I haven't had the chance to pixelate it out. So what I'm going to do is put my hand over the center of his face. But I just want you to see his color. And tell me if you would, if a black female officer, a Hispanic male officer, and a white male officer would have, if you too would have identified him as a black male. This is the driver that got away. This is a recent booking picture. And he is booked now under being a black guy. I mean, a white guy, I'm sorry. He used to be booked under black guy. I'm getting confusing myself. He used to be booked under black male. But now he is booked under white male. Come on, open. Because I want to show y'all how this makes no sense that they keep referring to this guy in this manner. Matter of fact, how good are my Photoshop skills? Maybe I could pixelate this quickly. Let's see how long it'll take to pixelate this. It shouldn't take but a second. As long as my thing responds, it shouldn't take but a second. Let's pixelate this so that you cannot see the features. And then you could see, would you too call him would you identify him? You see him and Marchello running. Would you identify them as two black males or a colored male, like the other one calls them? The one from Vermont calls them two colored guys. I surely, if I was the arresting officer, would have pulled up to this scene and I would have seen 3 white guys. That's how I would have wrote that down. I honestly, I would have seen 3 white guys. Because this man looked white as I don't know what. But they're hiding him. I told y'all that. They're hiding him. They have to hide him. They have to protect him. So the way that they're hiding him is they're throwing Marchello under the bus. Remember, whoever squeals first gets the deal first, girl. I'm almost done. I'm just looking for the pixelating tool. I ain't been in Photoshop in so freaking long. So I can't remember where everything is. Oh, here it is. Pixelate. So let's pixelate this so it does not. I just want you to see the. Wait. Hold on. Okay. There's the pixelate filter. Pixelate. No, I don't like that pixelation. You would have never identified him as a black guy. I wouldn't have. There we go. Now let me show you this driver that got away. That really didn't get away, but they say he got away. Let me show you this other black colored guy. That's the other black colored guy that got away. Y'all see that? An officer, a black officer, a Hispanic officer, and a white officer mistook him as a black guy. The two victims, alleged, mistook him as a colored guy. Now, let me show you Marchello. This is his old. Marchello been in this system since he was 19. He is now 42, almost 42. He's 41. Now this is Marchello Jackson. Clearly looks like a white, now I'm doing it. He clearly looks like a black guy. Would you have mistook this guy and the other guy? Would you have mistook them for two black guys or two colored guys? And this guy, you would have mistook him for a colored guy. I don't understand how all of them did that. They did that to hide him. They had to hide him. And they took this whole ordeal and threw it on Marchello. They claimed this man got away. That man never got away. He didn't get away. He was arrested. I don't know if they really put him under arrest, but he was caught. He didn't get away. He did not get away. But now they have to save him, like they have to cover him. They have to delete him from this case because he's helping them. He's giving them what they wanted. They have to. Okay. So now that I showed y'all that. Okay, having a GUN pointed at you will certainly make you shake. A police GUN. Just like any other GUN. So let's see. One of the other things was this young man told you, Mr. Nevins, was he wrote that this statement was before he ever had the chance to identify my client as the one being in the car. But when you read this statement back there, you'll see that the next to the last line, the guy that ID'd was the guy that held the GUN to my friend in my head. Okay, think of the importance of that. He told you and me, I wrote this statement all at once before we ever ID'd him as the person. Okay, but he's clearly, when he's writing this statement, already identified him. That's what that says. And right next to it, on this document, is the $80. Even after they've caught Mr. Jackson with the $60, he's writing what really happened. It was $80 that was taken from me that I had just gotten from my friend, the bartender at the club. Put that aside for a second. Mr. Wintle indicated that is two colored men that accosted them, that he had never seen them before, and he did not know the area of town that they ended up in because he's not familiar with it. Well, you can look at when you're determining the truthfulness of anybody's statement is what we've got here is two statements against one statement about what happened. And all you have is the circumstantial evidence around it to say, well, do you believe the two guys or the one guy? But you can also look at how the people testified. The judge would tell you that. And with respect to Mr. Winter, who looked about 14, although he was 22 now, he really did look young. Did you notice the snippiness that he had? Did you notice how he got annoyed? Did you notice how he was freaking fidgeting on the stand as he was testifying like this? I seen that in court. That's what he was doing. Well, sure, I didn't give anybody permission to take my wallet. And that was with Miss Brennan, the person trying to help him. Did you see how he reacted and the attitude he had? And the reason that is important, I think, or I submit to you, is this. You determine the truthfulness based on what somebody will tell you. And while you watch them, you can kind of figure out what my feeling is. And he was not super defensive about things. Even with his own lawyer or the state lawyer that is here to help him, was he not putting up fences all over? Compared to that, how was my client, Mr. Jackson? He's not an expert testifier like these cops were. They didn't do just a good job, as the judge pointed out today. But he's not used to this. And he sure looked a little nervous. But was he respectful? Did he look people in the eye and say what happened? Did he admit things that were obvious? Yes. He didn't have a conversation about everything. Because one of the burrs and the sticks under the saddle, as it is when somebody is telling you, they're saying this is the truth. And when you point out that they've never mentioned it before, just like in Mr. Wintel's case, but you never mentioned anything about they were going to take you to a lake. That's pretty important, because that makes this kidnapping. That whole attempted murder type thing. There's nothing in here about taking to a lake. Nothing in here about we're going to ill you. But that's, again, those resonating voices. Those resonating things you hear in your head from now on out. But yet Mr. Wintel never mentioned it in 22 minutes after the fact. But today, he's adamant that that happened. And when I bring it to his attention, and I don't think it's a snippy way myself, he wasn't happy about it. He did the weaseling. Not my client. You know, once you say something and set the die, you are pretty much stuck with what you said, because you can't go back then and say 6 months later, I was mistaken. It's not him, or I don't want to be involved. It's like, well, we told the police this happened. We've got to stick by it. And not only are we going to stick by it, but we're going to embellish it, because now it's really bad. Now we're really making it much worse. But their memories, their perceptions would be so much clearer 22 months or minutes after. As opposed to when that 8 months later, and yet none of this kind of comic book tough guy talk is in there. The officers can only testify, and they all did testify to what that was. Two black guys got out of the car and they ran. And I didn't see anybody sling a GUN or a wallet or anything else. I stuck with these two white guys that got out and determined that quick they were the victims. Two black guys running. Now it's really what this case really looks like now. Now that the defendant that bailed is now being booked under being white, it looks like it was three white guys in that car pulled over to go into the hood to get substance. Three white guys and a black guy driving into the hood with intentions on getting substances, getting right, and heading back to the club. So it's three white guys and one black guy. That's what it's really looking like now. That's what all the officers seen when they got on that scene of the crime. They seen three white guys that must be innocent and the one black male that has to have done this. That's what that scene looked like. That's why that played the way it played. Race very much had to do with this case. If Marchello himself was white as well, I think that cop would have let all of them go, to be honest. Which is sad, but to be honest, I think he would have let them all four go. Okay, but there's memories. Their perceptions would be so much clearer 22 months or minutes after, as opposed to when that was 8 months later. And yet none of this kind of comic book tough guy talk is in there. The officers can only testify, and all they did testify to was that two black guys got out of the car and they ran. Marchello did not run. It is proven he did not run. They all lied and said Marchello ran. And I didn't see anybody sling a GUN or a wallet or anything else. I stuck with these two white guys that got out and determined that quick, demonstrating, so he's demonstrating that they were victims. Two black guys running, two white guys trying to run. Well, we're going to go with the black guys running as the bad guys, and the white guys, we're going to determine that they're just poor victims. Now, both the white guys that are these poor victims say, we found our wallets. They were in the dirt. And guess what? They were on the passenger's side. There was different testimonies about that. If y'all seen the last transcript, one guy says they were on either side. One guy said they were both on Marchello's side. And then the one guy says they were on the ground outside. The police's statement says that one wallet was found on the one guy, and the other guy's wallet was found on the floorboard. So when the police said on the floorboard, they checked him. When that victim said that his wallet was found on the ground, they said, but I thought your wallet was found on the floor. And he says, yeah, the floor ground. So there is several different theories on where those wallets were found. They were trying to tie those wallets to Marchello because that solidifies that robbery. And you have to have the robbery for everything else to stand. So, but the question is, where are the pictures, the crime scene pictures? Why would you go touch that wallet if that wallet is part of the crime scene? Where's the analysis of the crime scene? Where is anything that proves, and the state had the burden of proof, and what could have clearly proved that Marchello had those wallets would have been dusting them for Marcello's fingerprints, but they decided not to. Why would you decide against that if you 100% know that Marchello had these wallets? Now, both white guys that are these poor victims say, we found our wallets. They were in the dirt. And guess what? They were on the passenger side. Again, look and see if that's written in the reports anywhere. But more importantly, what did Officer Savage tell you? When I first went up to try to determine what had happened, I stuck with the car while my partner went after the guys that were running. And I got their identification, determined who they were. Where is your identification? It's in your wallet. So Wrongfully had his wallet on him. So there's no robbery with Wrongfully. Wrongfully had his wallet. And also the $60 is not tied to Wrongfully either. It is tied to Nevins. Because Nevins lies and says he borrowed the $60 from his bartender friend. So nothing ties to Wrongfully. So there should not be any charge found on the ground, and then the floor, and then the floor ground. It is out in the dirt by the passenger side. No, it's on the floorboard on the passenger side, which is quite different from the dirt. And I think an important difference, because you could hand somebody your wallet. You can throw your wallet somewhere. You can do whatever to act like you've been robbed instead of what you're doing, something else nefarious down there. And it's easy enough. You can't get in, you can't get it outside because that window is rolled up. You threw it in the passenger seat and say he took that. How could they prove that didn't happen? They didn't prove anything. And what's more important, because the judge is going to tell you, a reasonable doubt can come from the evidence, a conflict in evidence, and the lack of evidence. And I think that you had a lot of that. But lack of evidence, the one piece of physical evidence that could prove to you that indeed this young man said, give me your wallets. And both of those young kids said, here's my wallet, sir. He took the wallets and he held them. Only when the police were right on him did he throw the wallets down. Those two wallets are never taken into custody. Thank you. Never taken into custody. That was evidence. Never taken into custody. They're gone right back into the pocket. They're never taken into custody to go down and get powdered, to check for fingerprints, to say, well, you know what? Marchello Jackson did hold both these wallets. Why did the state fail to do that? Why did that officer fail to do that? It was because he was scared that it would not turn up Marcello's. If they had dusted them wallets and Marcello's fingerprints were not on them darn wallets, they could not have charged him. That's why they had to delete that. They had to take out anything that could implement anybody but Marchello, because they're sticking this to Marchello. Okay. The police were right on him. Did he throw the wallets down? Wait, where did I leave off? Oh, yeah. The police were right on him. Did he throw the wallets down? Those two wallets were never taken into custody. They're gone right back in the pocket. They're never taken into custody to go down and get powdered and check for fingerprints to say, well, you know what? Marchello Jackson did hold both these wallets. So it wasn't just something else going on and he got in the car. Marchello Jackson is the man. You know, you don't have any evidence that these things ever happened. You do have evidence that Marchello Jackson is on that prints on, oh gosh, what is it doing? Not now. Okay. You don't have any evidence that these things ever happened. You do have evidence that Marchello Jackson is on that, prints on that, or both of those wallets, and nobody ever tried to. An important piece of lack of, let me try to read that again. An important piece of lack of a piece of evidence that could convince you beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt. Now, he did run. Again, I submit to you, he didn't run. It's not enough room to run. A 19-year-old black kid with dreads who just had a GUN thrown on his lap knows exactly what time it is. He's going to get rid of the GUN. He's going to take off, but instead of continuing to scatter, to scoot like UC did, once the police showed up, he stops. UC stops, they say, then keeps going. And the black cop said that UC turned around and looked at her. They both looked at her. And then they said, oh, you seen him? And she said, oh, no, I didn't get a good look at him. Okay, UC stops, they say, then keeps going. And he walks at the direction of that young lady and sits on the sidewalk. Marchello walks up to the female officer and sits down. Or on the curb and waits and watches his life passing by in front of him. The lights going, people talking. There's the poor victims. Now I'm the criminal sitting on the side. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. He's got $60 for work. Didn't even know how much. Now suddenly $60 connects me to this. Even though the guy writes clearly, I had $80 taken from me exactly. So yeah, he ran, but he had a good reason to run. The one officer told you. Also, there is a thing that happens now in this section of town. People that don't know it or don't know the substance dealers in it will get other people involved to, Ms. Brennan, Judge, I would object to arguing non-facts, not in the evidence. Court, sustain. Your Honor, that was in evidence. The court, I sustain the objection to that line of questioning. Sims, you did not. With respect to that question, I respectfully disagree. The court, well, ladies and gentlemen, you remember the evidence. Rely upon your own recollection of it. I'll let you go forward with your argument. Mr. Sims, yes, sir. All I'm saying is that officer told you that down there, that he had. The objection was sustained later when I tried to go further. But he said before any objection was made or sustained, yes, I've arrested people for getting in cars and directing people from out of the neighborhood to where they can find substances. He said that clearly. He also said this is a high substance area, high substance crime area. You know, the big question becomes, well, and we don't have the person that actually took these fellows' ID either, Mr. Jackson. Oh, wait, hold on. And we don't have the person that actually took these fellows to ID either, Mr. Jackson, or the two other folks that Mr. Wintle says he tried to ID after he went back to the club. Remember, they went and grabbed him and brought him out a couple of times to ID other people to drive them places. The question that must be in your mind is, well, why in the world would they not ID UC if they had had the opportunity or somebody else to say that they were involved? And the answer, I believe, is very simple. The answer is this. If I was doing something illegal with the driver and we picked up a passenger and the passenger didn't know I was doing something illegal, and then the cops stopped us, and then the driver got away, but the passenger didn't, and the passenger knew nothing about what we were doing, if I want to clear myself with the police, then because I don't know the law, I don't know whether they're going to say, what are you doing down here in this car with these guys at this night? And why are you doing running? That's what it says. Sorry. And why? What are you responsible for? You reflect the attention. You deflect the attention. Because there is no way that Marchello Jackson can hurt them. He doesn't know what they've been doing before he got in the car. He doesn't know what's going on. So it's easy enough to say, I don't know who the other guy is. One of them said, he's taller than me. One of them said, he's shorter than me. Guess it was Nevins that said he was shorter than him. And you saw Nevins. He wasn't a big kid. What is he? About 5'8", 5'9"? And he said, well, he was shorter than me. Wintle says the guy was about 5'10" or 5'6", or I'm sorry, it was about 5'10" or 6 feet. That second person, they don't have any details on him. Well, he's a black guy, or he's a colored guy, as the other one called him. The police even say he was a much shorter guy or a shorter guy running, but nobody has a good view of who this other man is. Although he's driving for this amount of time, he's the one in charge of the wheel. I submit to you, they didn't want to know who he was. They could have identified him. They didn't want to, because once you identify him, then he's going to oot you. He's going to oot back. Nah, that's not why they were down here. I'm sorry, it didn't say that. Let me read that over because I formulated that wrong. Let's read it over so I can read verbatim what this transcript is saying. They didn't want to, because once you identify him, then he's going to shoot back. Nah, that's not why they were down here. We were down here for quite another reason. And it wasn't about no kidnapping or carjacking, and it wasn't about no armed robbery. Lastly, I told you this would come down to two words, or to one sign, that is. You've got an explanation from Nevins about why he drew the happy face. And you got an explanation after he had 3 times to review my copy of his statement. 3 times he had reviewed this. And You saw him. He read. He read it pretty completely. And during those 3 times, I mentioned to him, at least once, look at the highlighted area. Because there were areas highlighted on my copy that I referred him to. Because there were areas highlighted on my copy that I referred him to. And one of the things that he said the last time I talked to him, and it was about the happy face. And I said, you wrote a happy face on your statement? I don't remember that all. Now he's seen it 3 times in front of you. And I said, you didn't see the highlighted happy face I showed you? Oh, well, there it is. It's highlighted. Not hard to miss. Not hard to miss, even when it's not highlighted, because it jumps right at you. But by the 3rd time, he had time to come up with an explanation. Well, see, the happy face deals with them being out of the car. That made me happy. Okay, that made me happy. It doesn't deal with them saying, I hate F, a derogatory word. Although you can tell for yourself whether there's an arrow that goes from the happy face to that they said, I hate F, or said, I hate Fs. You'll be able to, this is all stuff that they added to after the initial report. They tried to make this a hate crime. Like, they really doctored this up. Like, they took it from one instance and doctored this all the way up. So they were basically trying to make this a hate crime. You'll be able to look at that and tell. I submit to you that either way, it doesn't really matter whether that arrow is pointing there. And he explained, well, I added that later after he told me unequivocally, I never added anything to this. I never wrote a second time. I never did addendums. But it helped him after he had seen the paper 3 times. He said, oh yeah, well, I did add that one thing. It's just an arrow to point out that I'm adding. Said, I hate F words. Although he had plenty of room to add that on the bottom, he didn't have to add that on the side up there. They amended those reports, those sworn reports, and added that stuff. But even if he was putting the happy face after the happy event of them getting out of the car, as opposed to the happy face, I hate F words, I submit to you that if I'm just robbed at G point and I'm just kidnapped, if I'm told I'm taking you to a lake and I'm going to ill you, if I'm carjacked, no matter what the situation, 22 minutes later, I ain't putting a happy face on it. There ain't nothing happy about it. Whether they got out of the car, whether they gave me back my money, whether they said I hate fat, bald guys. Ain't nothing that smiley face about that. And that shows the state of mind of that individual at the time. That he's writing this statement after this so-called kidnapping, carjacking, armed robbery. He's the scapegoat for whatever they were doing down there. And I wish to God I knew what that was. But I wasn't there. I'm trying to piece it together and show you that you cannot have an abiding conviction of guilt, that he did these things when all you have is these inconsistencies, all this weirdness going on. There is one good reason you find this young man not guilty. That's because he's not guilty. He's innocent because he didn't do it. There's just too much going on down there, and we don't know what it is. I'll talk to you, I swear, just very briefly in a little bit. But for now, I really do appreciate y'all coming back today and being with us and paying attention. Thank you very much. Ms. Brennan, thank you. May it please the court counsel. Okay, so I might read Ms. Brennan, the assistant state attorney's testimony tomorrow because this is long. I didn't know this would take that long. So I think hers is about almost, hers is a while, but we'll go live and we'll review I'm tired. We'll do that tomorrow. All right, guys, I'm going to end it here. It is probably, what time is it, girl? Oh my goodness. I got church in a few minutes. All right, guys, here's your girl Cadillac.